It's the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome! Hey, everybody. Welcome in. My name is Chris, and today's show is brought to you by the letter Theta. Hello there, kids. Thank you so much for being here today. Maybe the fact that you're here means you won your quarterfinal fantasy matchup, in which case, congratulations, you're amazing. Or maybe the fact that you're here means you lost in your fantasy playoffs or didn't even make your fantasy playoffs, but you like listening to the show and hearing what we think about the NFL overall, in which case, you're much more amazing, and I love you very much. The thing that I know can be hard to realize in the moment is, of course, you want to win the whole thing, but it's poker. You know, you can be a great poker player, but sometimes the cards just don't go your way. We've all been there. We've all lost with what should have been a winning hand. It stinks, really stinks. I think it's dumb to say you shouldn't be upset at all. It's only fantasy football, because sure, you can be upset. Meaning is where we make it. Fantasy football is very, very stupid. It's so stupid. But name me something that isn't pretty stupid. Can I read you part of a paragraph from the book that I'm hopefully going to get published next year, which is about football? And I quote myself, very self-indulgently, quote, "A football season doesn't matter. If it's true that half of Americans watch football, it's also therefore true that half of Americans don't. Pop songs don't matter. Comic book movies don't matter. Culture is fake. A clothesline for people to hang identities from, and a tool to construct in-groups and out-groups. And if you want to argue that the sports and shows and streams and social media everyone puts out on the wire represent a concerted effort to distract us from material inequality and societal ills and personal decay, hey, that's probably true. But the aesthetic life is tough. Maybe you believe the only things worth really connecting over are conquering disease and pondering the almighty, but then don't you dare read one book and tell someone else you liked it, because at that point, fandom just becomes a matter of degree." End quote. So, be pissed for a little while, but then, keep doing things you like, and if that includes listening to this very stupid podcast, incredible. Would be so happy. I'm happy to have you. Heck, you could even stay subscribed to this podcast in the off season. You could even join the yacht club and stay subscribed. A lot of people are leaving the $5 a month yacht club, which is fine. I love you. It's wonderful for anyone to be in the yacht club for any amount of time. But if you do stick around, I'd be happy. And we will do everything we can in the off season to make sure you have fun. All right. And of course, time marches on, and now we're going to start thinking about the fantasy semifinals and the NFL playoffs. And the first step on a Tuesday morning in doing that is let's talk about the Monday night game. The Steelers don't exactly thrill us, but they win pretty easily over the Dolphins, knocking them out of the playoffs. This was quite a fantasy tease in that it was the first game in NFL history in which two different tight ends scored a rushing touchdown. If you watched it, if you happen to have a running back starting for you in this game, that's not a fun fact. That's an unfun fact. Because instead of Devon Achane or Jalen Warren getting short touchdowns, we got scores from Connor Hayward and Jonnu Smith rushing the ball. Fortunately, Achane would produce enough yards not to hurt too badly, but Warren, as a tease, second quarter in the red zone, it was Kenneth Gainwell at first. He got face masked, also got hit really hard. So the Steelers got the ball down to the 2. Warren came back in the game, and here it was going to be. Warren gets 2 tries inside the 2. The Dolphins hadn't allowed a rushing touchdown in 5 weeks, and they stuffed him both times. So instead, Hayward comes in for a tush-push rushing touchdown, and the Steelers took a lead that they would not relinquish. Warren also had a long run called back by holding. The box score makes it look like Gainwell just dominated here. I don't think that's really the case. However, we were told that Warren was questionable with an illness, and when it came clearer that the Dolphins weren't offering much resistance in the second half, it became more Gainwell and less Warren. The success rates were honestly about the same, but Gainwell was the one who popped a 38-yarder in the third quarter that didn't get called back by holding after Warren had done some good close quarters running, and that one play makes it look like Gainwell was a monster over Warren. He played well. In ranking Pittsburgh's running backs today for next week, I have to consider putting them closer. The Steelers play Detroit in Week 16, so they'll need all the points they can get. I think I'm still going to have Warren higher. Aaron Rodgers had a super efficient night, but unlike last week against the Ravens, Pittsburgh didn't come out throwing it deep, and in fact, Rodgers was 0 for 1 on attempts of 20-plus air yards, only 5 total attempts of 10-plus air yards. It was all short stuff. They realized, along with all of us watching, that the Dolphins in the second half had pretty much already said 1-2-3 Cancun and let the game slip by quickly. But fortunately, in the third quarter, Rodgers decided to thread a needle he probably should not have tried to thread, but somehow the ball got through to DK Metcalf, and he did something to stir the echoes. It was really a pseudo-Julio moment. Metcalf caught it, shoved Minka Fitzpatrick, not Minka Kelly, in the face, basically stiff-armed him straight to the gates of hell, got free, powered over 2 other guys for a touchdown. That touchdown probably helped a lot of folks. Otherwise, he was sitting on 2 for 27, but we will take it. And then the fourth quarter was basically all basura, and that's when Jonnu Smith lined up at halfback and took a pitch and scored his rushing touchdown instead of, one of the running backs. But the Steelers look alive. Winning that Ravens game last week was a surprise to me, and it certainly gives them relevance for the rest of the NFL season. The Dolphins, on the other hand, holy moly, Buck and Aikman were rightly calling out whatever the heck they were doing in the second half. Down big, not really hurrying, not maximizing the clock at all, taking the play clock down beneath 10 seconds every time they would break the huddle. It was 28-3, and they went on 2 long scoring drives, but basically they just weren't going fast. They took up the whole fourth quarter, and only at the very end were they like, I guess we should, a football game is actually finite. We should call timeouts and stuff. Darren Waller was the prime beneficiary in the red zone, catching 2 garbage touchdowns. Would have been nice if Jalen Waddle had done one of them, but he didn't, and in fact looked like maybe he was in and out of the lineup a little bit with a minor injury. That did not really look like a team that wanted to be out there in the cold by the end. We talked about how the late season coaching job by Mike McDaniel after a 1-6 start maybe saved his job. I don't know. The way the team looked last night, can we say that they unsaved it? Achane is the no-brainer, obviously. Waddle is subject to the wins of Tua, and Waller's a tight end. And you can chase it, especially, the dream tight end matchup is coming up against the Bengals in warm weather in Week 16. Darren Waller's going to probably be in my top 10. And this was garbage time production, but you know what? You'll take it, and the Bengals are very, very gettable via the tight end, and so I think you should be starting him, frankly, unless you have a better option. Of course, the number 10 tight end and the number 24 tight end, as we keep saying, basically the same. So it's a little random, but sure, I'll take the slight thumb on the scale in favor of the tight end playing the Bengals. But of course, it's all subject to Tua, who made a crusher mistake at the end of a long drive to start this game. A bad interception, easily picked off, whereupon ESPN put up a really good illustrative stat. All 15 of Tungo Vailoa's interceptions have been against zone defense. That stinks. That's bad. You can't have that. He's played bad. I don't think it's that difficult to understand why. We've always understood Tua's limitations. This is whether or not you have Tyreek Hill or a Tyreek Hill shaped player, someone fast. Maybe Hill himself wasn't capable of being that player any longer, but obviously that Tyreek Hill type receiver just makes it so much easier for a quarterback like Tua, who just doesn't have the big arm. And, someone a defense always has to account for with multiple guys, a speed threat. Waddle's a speed threat. He's just not the Tyreek kind of player, and they don't have a second good receiver. Obviously, Hill's been missing since week 4, and the Dolphins have had to reinvent themselves, and that reinvention certainly has not been flattering to Tua.
Today's kickoff.
Okay, on today's show, let's review 5 more games from Sunday. Talk about what they looked like, try and hit on the stuff that can change our opinions on whom to use heading into Week 16. Of course, if you don't hear the game you're interested in, it means I talked about it on Monday's podcast. Coming up today, we will do Panthers-Saints, Cardinals-Texans, Titans-49ers, Commanders-Giants, and Browns-Bears. And then my guest will be Dave Kluge from footballguys.com, and Dave and I will count down some waiver ads you can consider in advance of Week 16. I think you'll have fun. You're great. I thank you so much for listening today. We're sponsored today by Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, seasonal pastries, and fresh pastas. Everything you get from Wild Grain bakes from frozen in 25 minutes or less. And Wild Grain's boxes are always fully customizable. They have a gluten-free box. They have a plant-based box. The magic of Wild Grain is the part where everything bakes from frozen, yet somehow tastes impossibly fresh. If you love fresh bread with dinner, I will certainly indulge every so often because I love making the carbs count. You can either go to the bakery and then it's a Mission Impossible movie because you have to eat the bread while it's still fresh, or you can do what I do and just pop it in the oven frozen. Half an hour later, you won't believe how good it is from Wild Grain. Also, seasonal pastries, apple pie bites, Parmesan herb biscuits, cranberry pecan rolls. So very good. And you can give the gift of Wild Grain to someone on your list. They have e-gift cards. Go check it out right now. Last minute gift. Great idea. I can get you $30 off your first box plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/Harris to start your subscription. Free croissants in every box and $30 off your first box. Check them out. wildgrain.com/Harris.
How many times you walk in a production meeting and somebody says, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? And every one of them is like, oh, I'm good. Everything's fine. I'm ready to roll. And it's never true. Right.
Wait, they lie to us? And yet you still year to year present us with what they said as if it is gospel? Shocking. All right, let's get back into the film watching with the most exciting of the games that I didn't cover on Monday. That's the Saints coming from behind to upset the Panthers. Can I just take a moment about the stupidity of playoff percentages? It's all that any game broadcast mentions. It's all that every football TV show talks about. Oh, they have a 64.7% chance of winning the division now. 17.1% chance of making the playoffs. I mean, it's fine to see that and say to yourself, okay, they might win the division. They might make the playoffs. But putting like a super exact number on it and like ranking teams, especially in the NFL, is so impossibly dumb. Oh, you mean if every favorite team wins the entire rest of the season, they'll make the playoffs? Guess what? It's the NFL. The favorites lose all the time. To say nothing of the fact, the Buccaneers lost on Thursday. That means the Panthers control their destiny. No, you idiot. The Panthers and Buccaneers play 2 times in the next 3 weeks. Both teams control their destiny. All right, rant over. Anyway, the Panthers blow this game pretty badly, up 17-7 until late third quarter. And the really big story for fantasy was shaping up was going to be both of the 2 must-start wideouts had done nothing. Teteroa McMillan and Chris Olave stuck on 1 catch apiece until deep into the fourth quarter. One of those guys would rescue us. One of those guys would not. Bryce Young played well. Tyler Shuck, I think probably a little less well, but Shuck did steady the ship in the second quarter by taking up basically the entire quarter, a 12-minute drive extended by infinite Carolina penalties, a juggling Juwan Johnson catch, and Devin Neal powering into the end zone for the Saints' first touchdown, and their only one for a long, long time. But Neal hurt his hamstring on the touchdown, had to leave the game. You also had Devon Vele make some early catches, but he would take a shot on a shoulder and leave as well. So the fill-ins at running back, Audric Estime and Evan Hull. Felt like in the second half, Hull was the early down preference, but Estime, for the second straight game, felt like injected some life, and he made 2 screen catches in emergency mode at the very end that helped New Orleans win. But what actually helped the Saints come back and win was what they did to replace Vele at wide receiver, which is, remember, Chris Olave plays for them. He was ignored for so much of the day. Someone got in Shuck's ear and said, "Buddy, throw it to number 12," and he did. 3 straight times, which got New Orleans down to the red zone, and then a few plays later, Olave had man coverage on the left side. He ran that bang 8 slant, and the throw led him perfectly, and Olave rescued us with a touchdown that tied the game at 17. Let us exhale a little bit. We'll have to see about Devin Neal's availability. I think it's safe to say that Olave is the main New Orleans Saint that we're relying on for these final 2 weeks. We should mention, I think Tyler Shuck was okay at the very end. The way this one ended was incredibly dumb by Carolina. The Saints were in long field goal range and were about to have to try a kick, but they had one more play, and Shuck did a quarterback draw up the middle. He slid, and a Panther defender just pounded him for a personal foul that made the kick a lot shorter. Shuck was off for, well, they actually did have one more play, because before they kicked it, they had one more play with like 4 seconds left. Spencer Rattler was in the game. They took Shuck to the blue tent. I think it was just because he was selling the play so hard, so they were like, all right, if you're going to sell it, you have to go sit down for a couple plays. So Rattler came in. We'll see. If Shuck isn't in there, it hurts everybody. Next week, the Saints are home against a truly bad Jets defense, and Olave is in, and then we'll check back in on everyone else's health. Unfortunately for Carolina, they lost, and Bryce Young never did start accentuating Ted McMillan the way the Saints figured it out with Olave. McMillan had one nice pluck off the turf in the fourth quarter. Earlier in the game, he almost scored a touchdown. There was a 4th and 2, and McMillan converted it, and right afterward, Young tried to hit him going into the end zone. It was thrown a little too far behind him, so the defender could knock it away, and that's how you get 2 catches and 25 yards. A day when the Panthers led throughout, Young with only 15 completions total. Most of his yards came on 2 plays, one a blown coverage where Young popped it up deep for Xavier Legette, and one a bomb touchdown to start the third quarter to Jalen Coker. You would still rather start McMillan, obviously, if you survived this outing from him. But we also have to admit, the kid has 5 catches the last 3 games combined. He had saved himself the previous 2 with a touchdown in each game. And it's true, he came within inches of doing the same thing in this game as well. I don't think we completely give up on him. I mean, a game against Tampa, that's a big one. Smells like a ton of points next week. But Tet's rookie season not exactly wrapping up the way we wanted. The Carolina backfield, it was certainly more Rico Dowdle as the main guy and Chuba Hubbard as the second guy. The snap count goes 33-24 in favor of Dowdle. The first drive for Carolina was their best of the day, and Dowdle was able to finish it off from in close for a touchdown. Hubbard did have a couple of nice highlights, a 3rd down in the third quarter that he converted basically entirely by himself. Just not much yardage available for either guy. Now maybe we tell ourselves a story about Week 13 when Hubbard had a lot of action. Maybe it was Dowdle somewhat hurt and playing through it, and then after the bye, it did feel like they went back to Dowdle being the main choice with Hubbard around to steal some looks for sure. The questions that we had for Cardinals-Texans going in weren't so much like, will the Texans win? They did. And I watched the film, and it became pretty clear who was going to win this game. It was 30-7 in the second half. The question, especially on review, is much more, all right, so how powerful is the Bortles in Jacoby Brissett? And the answer, watching this back, was pretty powerful. Arizona fumbled a kickoff away after a Nico Collins touchdown early, so Brissett didn't even have the ball till he was losing 10-0. That's not a Bortles, really. That's just the Cardinals. The first series for Arizona was a disaster, and it was 17-0 before you knew it. That's kind of a Bortles. But from there, you can see the numbers. I mean, none of it was great, but Trey McBride scores once from the 2, and then another time in Basura time. Michael Wilson was real quiet for a long time, but he got his score in the third quarter, only 5 for 54, but the touchdown certainly helps. Next week, Falcons? Sure. How is this not just still the gravy train for a team that loses but throws it a ton? The variable is Marvin Harrison. And as we've been saying, if Marv Jr. can play, it takes the shine off using Wilson. Otherwise, I think we're good. I think Brissett, until like 30 seconds left in the first half, had 66 yards passing, and all but one or two of them was to Trey McBride. But to be honest, Wilson could have had more. Third quarter, he catches a deep crosser, then a short slant, then a comeback, and then Brissett tries to find him in the end zone again, but it's thrown too far out in front and intercepted. I don't think we bet into this winning streak as long as there's no Harrison in the game. So the running back news in this game was rough for both teams. Both starting running backs get hurt early. I don't think too many folks cared that much about Bam Knight early. He got carted off after his first carry. I mean, as human beings, we certainly care. Don't want to see a guy in pain, but I don't think that many of you were starting him in fantasy leagues. But Woody Marks, that one leaves a mark, sorry. Chris Myers was doing this game, so puns are just rolling off my tongue. Marks actually scored a touchdown on an under-center snap that C.J. Stroud fumbled right between his legs, so it skidded back to Marks, and from the 2-yard line he scored, but he would tweak an ankle and not play again from the 12-minute mark of the second quarter, at which point Jawhar Jordan, a tiny-boned rookie, there was no Nick Chubb, so Jawhar Jordan took over. He played really well. Granted, it was against the Cardinals, but Houston gets the Raiders next week. So, we're going to at least mention Jawhar Jordan later in waivers. He's very slight by NFL running back standards, but looked quick. Definitely has long speed. Whether or not he's legitimately quick or just a terrible Arizona defense, I can't really tell you. But he's fast, and he broke one on a pitch around the right side. We're told already that Woody Marks' injury will probably turn out okay. Also, we don't know. Maybe Nick Chubb is able to return as well. So my guess is we're not going to be aggressively adding Jawhar Jordan. But if things were to fall in his favor, we could be talking about using him in the fantasy semifinals. And then probably Nico Collins and no other receivers. It was a big day for Dalton Schultz. From the first possession on, the Cardinals were trying to double Nico and leaving Schultz open. And it surely could keep happening. I can't see the future. All I know is the past month, Schultz has done a 3 for 22 and a 1 for 8. But certainly, yes, it is a good matchup, and CJ Stroud does seem to trust him. I would just be a little bit aware that Max Crosby against that Texans offensive line could be a problem before I want to at least acknowledge it before I get too far out over my skis on using a ton of Texans. We are sponsored by Fitbod, and I'm not a huge New Year's resolution guy, but if that's what it takes for us to really dig in and make a commitment to work on something that we really want to do for ourselves, I'll allow it. And of course, one of the biggest resolutions people sometimes make is getting in better shape. Well, I can personally verify that Fitbod is a wonderful first step. Having the Fitbod app is like having a personal trainer, except 1 year of Fitbod costs less than 1 session with a personal trainer. Fitbod creates workouts for you based on your goals, your available equipment, your level of experience. You don't have to already be a workout stud. This is a great way to get started. Fitbod will help you track everything. It'll teach you how to do exercise with a library of 1,000 videos. If you think you're not in good enough shape yet to use Fitbod, you're wrong. It's an awesome way to start your fitness journey. I use it. I love it. Track your progress. You'll be amazed how much fitter you just get with some day-by-day consistency, and Fitbod can really help with that. But don't take my word for it. Try the app. Go to fitbod.me/Harris. Try the app for free for 7 days and also get 25% off your subscription. Do it for yourself and for the folks who love you. 25% off. fitbod.me/Harris.
This is a guy.
Well, this is a guy who has 3 more games from Week 15 to talk about. Titans-Niners. More fun than the other 2 I'm going to talk about. A lot of points, good plays, sustained drives. That Niners running game, we know it just doesn't have the push that it had in past years. That's been true most of the season. And I think the Titans' run defense is also good. Christian McCaffrey got a touchdown. He had a chance for another, but got stopped short because there was no push from the line. And also, they just didn't really throw McCaffrey the ball that much. Instead, 2 red zone touchdowns on 3 total catches for Juwan Jennings. A lot of work for George Kittle, thus a very good game for Brock Purdy. My talking point coming out of this game was really about Ricky Pearsall. And of course, since I watched it, we've had a lot of news about his injury. The first play of the game was a pass to Pearsall. On that tackle, he got hip dropped, uncalled, of course, because they don't call it. And Pearsall limped off looking kind of hurt, but he would return. He would be the guy who drew interference in the end zone to set up McCaffrey's touchdown. He had a deep dig early third quarter for a big gain down to the red zone, but unfortunately he would limp off again at the end of the game. In between, it looked good. It looked a lot like September before Pearsall was out for so long that we basically gave up on him. The reason I'm viewing this game through the Pearsall lens is that, first of all, start most of your Niners next week in Indianapolis. I think, the usual suspect should be in. Also, I've gotten a bunch of questions the past few weeks. Hey, Harris, is Ricky Pearsall's value gone for Dynasty? I kind of don't even know where that's coming from. He was hurt. I think he's the future number 1 wideout of the 49ers, especially with Brandon Ayuk out of the picture. I get it that the more urgent question right now is, we're not positive that he's going to even play. He had an MRI on a knee or an ankle. Maybe that just makes him hands off. Kyle Shanahan at first said not a big deal, and then 12 hours later said, yeah, we're worried about him. It's too bad because he felt like the top target in this game and wrecked some defensive players with some routes and some speed. I think he's a buy in Dynasty, in fact. And I'm reserving judgment. Let's see what the injury news is before completely ruling him out as a Hail Mary type wide receiver 3 in the fantasy semifinals. If either of those 2 Jennings touchdowns goes anywhere else, if McCaffrey scores instead and it never gets to Jennings, we'd be saying, maybe we should be rating Pearsall over Jennings in week 16. But of course, we have the health concerns. We're probably not going to rank it that way heading into the Colts game. For the Titans, well, it was a bad first drive. After that, they got push. That offensive line played well for a second week in a row. Also, the Niners aren't great on defense. But the offensive line playing well meant that Tony Pollard played well. They get a Chiefs defense next week. It's still probably pretty good, but they're also playing out the string. And is Chris Jones maybe going to sit with his bad hamstring? 2 games represents a streak. Pollard's a good player when he gets room. I think, you can be a little more aggressive with him this week. There's a way for Pollard to rear up and be a top 20 running back for the next game. We should keep it in mind, guys like Pollard and Breece Hall and Quinshon Judkins, Ashton Genty. These are good players. If their circumstances happen to get a little bit better, they're good. They can produce, but obviously they're in disaster circumstances right now. It's not a sure thing. But with Pollard next week, I'll be intrigued. And Cam Ward should have turned it over, threw a couple of balls directly into the hands of defenders. They dropped them. Gunnar Helm had a long touchdown. That was a good throw. I've said it a bunch. I think you can squint and see something with Ward. Also, Chig Okonkwo. Apropos of nothing, because obviously you can't even roster Chig Okonkwo in a redraft league right now. But second quarter, he makes these back-to-back plays where you say, man, that's a good catch. Super physical, good running. Why can't he do this all the time? And then they never even threw him the ball again. I've said it before. I assume this is him. A lack of coachability, a lack of attention to detail, some reason that he's never gotten a toehold. He is a free agent. I'll at least watch where he goes in 2026. We've got the Commanders ending their 8-game losing streak against the Giants while simultaneously trying so hard to choke away an insurmountable lead at the end. What can we learn from these doofus teams? I'll tell you one thing Jonathan Vilma learned doing this game. He does not think the Giants are being very smart with Jackson Dart. Pretty much any time they called a run play for Dart or let him do a zone read where he has the option of keeping it, Vilma was correctly all over it. Why? Why are you taking these kinds of chances with a guy who's had concussions this year? And in fact, on the goal line in the fourth quarter, Dart kept one and got a knee in the skull and had to come out. And Jameis Winston came in for a couple of plays. For the fourth down, Dart was back out there, so they determined that he didn't have a concussion. I don't know, I don't always trust that process, and he threw an incompletion. Dart played okay insofar as either quarterback did anything particularly well. A bunch of mistakes by both of them. Can we please do away with the argument, oh, I'm thrilled to have Marcus Mariota being the one throwing to Terry McLaurin? No, you really shouldn't be. Correlation is not causation. Mariota was bad in this game. Took a sack fumble, but the Commanders recovered. He had 7 completions in the first 3 quarters. But I'll grant you, beginning of the fourth, it's true, after like 3 straight false starts, the Commanders called a deep post for McLovin, and he went up, and he got it, and he broke a tackle, and he scored a touchdown, and that helped me a lot in a couple fantasy semis for sure. You know we love McLovin. Having a worse quarterback is never good for the wideout. Stop it. It wasn't true with Mac Jones. It's not true with Marcus Mariota. Mariota, not a fantasy starter, even though I know Mr. Barons keeps ranking him that way, but I don't believe in him. But as for Dart, definitely better in this game than Mariota, but a first half filled with overthrows, a vexing interception at the end of the second quarter that gave Washington a field goal and made the halftime deficit 22-7. It was 29-14 after McLaurin's touchdown, and that game was over. But then Mariota fumbles cluelessly with 6 minutes left, and Jeremy McNichols follows that up with a fumble himself, with Washington only up 8, giving the Giants a chance to go tie. I will not be nominating this game film for the Hall of Fame. The running back situations on these teams felt a little clarified. For the Giants, Tyrone Tracy was the starter, and Devin Singletary only played 16 offensive snaps to Tracy's 51. Tracy scored after Dart had a long scramble up the middle into the red zone, and also Tracy caught a wheel route falling backwards in the end zone covered by Bobby Wagner, so in other words, wide open. And with no Chris Rodriguez, it's true that McNichols got the entire first series to himself, but that appeared to be kind of like a thank you for services rendered, because after that, it was mostly JSM. JSM only had a 32-27 snap advantage, but an 18-10 touch advantage that was actually an 18-6 touch advantage after the first drive. So if there's no Rodriguez again for the Eagles this week, JCM played pretty well. Had a couple of nice power runs up the gut, one of which was a touchdown. Obviously, these are tough offenses to love, but Tracy and JCM definitely got themselves into semifinal consideration. And we've got the Browns and Bears. An easy win and a slog to watch. The big news pregame was at the last minute, Rome Odunze was named inactive after he'd been deemed fit and ready to go by the skin puppets in the NFL media, I guess, meaning that he tried his ankle pregame and decided against playing. So I hope you had time to get him out of your lineup. The Bears took care of business against a thoroughly mailing-it-in opponent. I thought the best player on the field was DeAndre Swift in this game, running more direct and tougher and breaking more tackles than usual. Not only about the touchdowns, those were good. You know, the second one of those touchdowns was a really good physical run. Kyle Monangai had several red zone carries, but didn't convert. Overall, I don't think you'd say, wow, major sea change. It was 35 snaps Swift, 28 Monangai, and not a competitive fourth quarter at all. Swift deserves the ranks deference, but I still think they should be near each other because touchdowns are going to go to either one of them. I think they both should be in viable starting territory as they have been for a while. 2 touchdowns for DJ Moore in the absence of Odunze. And also we saw Luther Burden limp off with an ankle injury and not return. I don't want to get too fooled by the little badass. It was just a week ago with no Odunze in the lineup. Matt Harmon was on the show talking about it just isn't working for DJ Moore and Ben Johnson, and that's mostly been true this year. The first touchdown, that was Monangai stopped in close, and then a play-action throw to DJ Moore. The second touchdown, Caleb Williams should not have thrown that ball running against his body into traffic. It could have been intercepted by 3 guys, but found its way through to the little badass. You know, we're going to have a decision to make if Odunze is out again. Will Luther Burden be out? He could be addable on waivers. If he's out, at that point, we might have to go with DJ Moore. as a semifinal starter, but certainly not a sure thing. Colston Loveland was involved early, had 3 chunk gains in the first half. As Caleb Williams, the referendum, mostly kept it under control, played okay. The Bears get a quick rematch and a harder game than this one at home next week against the Packers, but no Micah Parsons, who's out with a torn ACL. And the Browns, let's not strain ourselves to play anyone in that offensive environment. Never say never, but Shedeur Sanders does not look like a good NFL starter. A little less runaround nonsense than Dylan Gabriel, but only a little. Certainly, I believe they're drafting a quarterback high in April. Sanders completed a bomb to Isaiah Bond in the first half. Cleveland's only first down of the entire first half. The only reason they scored 3 points in this game was the Bears went for a 4th down around midfield and didn't get it. There was another deep catch by Bond, whereupon Sanders tried to hit Jerry Jeudy running into the end zone, and Jeudy handed the ball to a defensive back. He's bad at football. Harold Fannin gets 14 targets here. Difficult workload to overlook, I admit it. Even Quinshon Judkins only had 15 touches, but it's just a really constipated attack, and you're not really getting any upside. Home Bills next week. As Rotopat said on Monday's show, Judkins is going to live in that 20 to 24 purgatory among running backs, like Breece Hall, where you know he can bust one, but if he doesn't, probably a long afternoon. We're sponsored by Lisa, the very bed I sleep on. Lately, if you've been waking up stiff and sore and can't figure out why, it can mean it's been a while since you've had a new mattress. And if you know you've been putting it off, I personally can recommend a Lisa mattress. You know this about me. I am a bi-coastal Lisa sleeper. I have a Lisa bed in California and in Massachusetts. I swear by it. But as I like to say, who cares what I think? What matters is whether Lisa is perfect for you, which is why they send you a bed and they give you 100 nights to sleep on it. And if you don't love it after more than 3 months, let them know. They'll make it right. In this holiday season, it's also good to mention what a good company they are. They donate beds to shelters. They support charities to get plastic out of the oceans. The beds are made in the USA. And of course, you know I've worked with them for a decade. I really, truly love their mattresses. Check out leesa.com. Their holiday sale runs for the rest of December. 20% off all mattresses. And when you check out with the code Harris, you'll get an extra $50 off the top. That's leesa.com for 20% off. And for an extra $50 off, use that code Harris.
Today's guest.
Waking up on the yard, I hear the possum cry. I'm so excited for Dave Kluge of the football guys. Never the last pick of all my draft picks. He's lining up his ranks so they're all cleverly crafted. One set of ranks will do.
And one set of ranks will do for Dave Kluge, who is great, and you can find him all over social media. Just look up Dave Kluge. You can find him at footballguys.com as well. If he's not talking with me and he's not sleeping, he's making a podcast somewhere. Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great. Here we are getting to the end of the season. It's bittersweet, right? Like we love football, but at the same time, getting through the holidays, unplugging, getting to watch football as a fan over this next month or so is definitely a fun experience.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be nice. I've done the last Monday show, the last major, every game film review. Deep dive is over for the show. Next week we'll do there's no Monday show. It'll be a Tuesday show. And it's nice to be over the hump, but also it's been really fun. It's been a super fun year. But you know what? There are people who are still alive in their Final Fours. I wouldn't say there's a very obvious place that everybody needs to go, but there are options because this time of year there are always injuries. So we'll do Week 16 waiver wire. Now, you've never done the waiver show with me. You've done 7 billion of your own waiver shows. The thing that you might not realize is, Dave, have you ever heard that when you're going to add somebody to a fantasy league, you also have to drop somebody? Has that ever occurred to you?
Yeah, and it's really easy a lot of times when I'm going through waivers and I'm like, I can't believe this player's available. And then I click add and then I look at my bench and I'm like, okay, well, somebody else is going to get him.
And the point is that we are going to probably drop somebody this week if we're still alive. And if we do, we give them the Thursday boot because this segment is sponsored by Thursday Boots, because we love Thursday Boots and they're wonderful. And if you're in the market for a nice pair of boots, maybe a gift card for a holiday gift, that would be a great idea too. ThursdayBoots.com. I'm just planting the seed. They've been sponsoring the show for, 11 years, maybe 10. I can't remember the first one. But I have a lot of pairs of Thursdays that are a decade old, and they hold up amazing, and I would really recommend ThursdayBoot.com. All right, so I will, of course, put our waiver ad suggestions in today's show notes, so don't crash your car trying to write them down. They're all just sitting there for you in the show notes. Dave, you know the requirement here is that we can only nominate players who are rostered in 1/3 of Yahoo leagues or fewer, and we're going to count down our suggested ads 5 through 1. I don't want you to feel compelled to sound really convinced that these guys are awesome, because none of them are. I'm pretty sure you didn't find someone that I didn't find, and therefore, found some secret awesome player. But we might have different opinions on the priority we would give them. So for week 16, who would be your number 5 waiver ad?
It's going to be Jawhar Jordan, and I think a lot of people are going to look at the box score and say, wow, 15 for 101 on the ground, another 2 for 2 for 17 through the air, and think that he is going to be the top guy. But it does seem like Nick Chubb might be coming back. It seems like they're kind of downplaying the severity of Woody Marks' injury as well. So this is, it's a very narrow path to relevance. One, we need Nick Chubb and Woody Marks both to miss week 16. Two, we have to assume that they don't get a Dare Agumbawale or somebody else a little bit more involved with a week to replan. But Jawhar Jordan, he looked pretty good last week. I mean, this is a guy with, he can hit hard. He's got some fun speed. And again, I don't think that this is going to be a plug and play option through the rest of the playoffs. But if this Woody Marks injury proves to be a little bit more serious than we thought, and if Nick Chubb can't get back, I think Jawhar Jordan would warrant some RB3 consideration going into next week's game.
Maybe even higher. They get the Raiders. He's an honorable mention for me only because I just did that Texans game film. And so right before I talked about that game, I went and looked, and like you said, they're already saying Woody Marks is going to play. So, but if you have Woody Marks in a fantasy semifinals, go get Jawhar Jordan. Why not? You can afford dropping somebody else, because we don't know for sure at this time of the week. It's funny, the name was familiar to me because I didn't know what happened in that game before I watched the Cardinal tape. So I was like, Jawhar Jordan, why do I know that name? And they kept saying it's his first NFL regular season action. And I'm like, wow, I guess I'm just crazy. I guess I don't, they all the players over the years just blend together. And then I realized Jawhar Jordan's 26 years old and was like draftable. I don't even, what year did he go in the draft? 2024, I guess. So Only a year ago, he was one of the COVID kids, but I realized, I think I have him in a dynasty league. Like he was a fourth round fantasy pick in a dynasty league. Sure enough, he from last year, not this year, he was sitting on a practice squad, a taxi squad type thing. Not that I used him or would use him, but it was funny to realize, he's not like a spring chicken. He's 26 years old, but it was pretty fun. He looked like skinnier than me. He looked real skinny, but real fast, a lot faster than me. So I think it's a pretty good call.
I think he was one of those last year where a lot of people just assumed that Joe Mixon was washed going into last year, and there was no faith in Dameon Pierce or Cam Akers. So he kind of became one of those like 5th round dynasty picks, like 20th round in your best ball picks. He was kind of a buzzy name. Never saw the field last year, but finally got a little taste of action last week.
Yeah, indeed. And I realized that I knew the name without even knowing the name. My number 5, I can't resist it anymore. I just put Colby Parkinson on the list. He's 4% rostered. Did Colby Parkinson make your top 5?
He's the next guy I was going to talk about, Chris. He was my number 4.
You talk about him then. Go ahead.
I mean, he's a tight end 4 since week 10. He's averaging a touchdown per game. But I think the biggest thing here, it's not what he's done. It's what he can do. He has seen at least one red zone target in 7 straight games, averaging 2 per game over that time. And now we know Davante Adams isn't going to be playing these next couple of weeks. Davante Adams has been the clear team lead in red zone targets. So Colby Parkinson, who's already the second favorite target in the red zone, now becomes the primary guy in the red zone. And we know this is what Matthew Stafford wants to do. He wants to throw the ball to a big-bodied player who can come down with the ball in the end zone. I think Colby Parkinson, it's touchdown dependent, but most tight ends are touchdown dependent. and he's been catching touchdowns. So I think this is one that, you don't feel great about it, but I think he kind of works into that back end tight end one streamer discussion.
The listeners are hooting hearing me because week after week I've been like, I'm not doing this with Colby Parkinson. I don't remember Jawhar Jordan. I sure remember Colby Parkinson when people were trying to sell him to me in Seattle. He's just a guy. He's a big human, but he is just a guy. It's obvious he's not a special player, but at some point, who cares? I have a league where I put a huge fab bin on him because I don't want to use Mark Andrews anymore. It's like, yeah, sure. Absolutely. So hoot away, listeners. That's completely fine.
To me, it's not all that different than, remember Robert Tonyan with the Packers? He wasn't doing anything special, but he was part of a good offense and was just consistently coming down with with touchdowns. I feel like that's kind of Colby Parkinson now. He's just the Robert Tonyan of this iteration of the Rams offense.
The listeners think you're a plant saying that. You know that we call these players a Tonyan on the show. You know that, right?
I didn't know. No, that is news to me. But yes, that's exactly what Colby Parkinson is.
Can he be your Tonyan? And he can be your Tonyan. Sure, maybe he'll be your Tonyan. It's hard to predict the Tonyan beforehand. I'll also say, just anecdotally, another piece of lingo from the podcast. Do you know what a jerk-face touchdown is?
No, what's that one?
That's when Matthew Stafford throws a 1-yard touchdown because he wants to be MVP.
Yeah. I mean, again, not all that different than what Aaron Rodgers used to do with Devontae Adams at the 1-yard line. I mean, we're seeing a lot of similarities here.
It was named for Aaron Rodgers. It was cousin Josh. His thing was Aaron Rodgers will do the jerk face touchdown. You're getting like 5 1-yard touchdowns from him in December because he's trying to win the MVP. All right, so Parkinson's your 4, he's my 5. So 4, 3, and 2 are all going to be receivers for me, but they're all kind of just contingent on injury nonsense. At number 4, I put Pat Bryant because I can't put Troy Franklin because Troy Franklin's 51% rostered. Everybody's already got Franklin, and nobody has Pat Bryant. And, of course, I would rather, the way it looked against the Packers, I would much, much rather Pat Bryant stay injured and Troy Franklin stay the number 2 receiver because it worked great and Franklin was super usable and would be really usable this week if there's no Bryant. But if Bryant's back, he's 3% rostered. Like last time I saw it, I don't know, does Franklin lose the starting gig because he lost it once? Pat Bryant had worked his way into the starting lineup for mysterious reasons. I don't understand it. So I just threw it in there like if this is the place that you're putting your miracle wide receiver, I hope the second Bronco receiver turns into something. Then if you have Franklin, make sure you get Bryant.
Chris, the cojones you would need to start Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant in your fantasy matchup. I mean, I get it, but trying to understand a mercurial Sean Payton wide receiver room, I don't know here. I mean, to me, it looks like before the bye, Pat Bryant kind of stole the role from Troy Franklin, and then with him out, Troy Franklin came back in and looked like the number 2. So I'd assume that if Pat Bryant comes back, he probably regains that role as the wide receiver 2, but I have no faith whatsoever in trying to predict what Sean Payton is going to do. So I would lean towards Pat Bryant over Troy Franklin, assuming both of them are healthy, but we could see the targets going to Evan Ingram in this game or Marvin Mims because that's just how Sean Payton operates. I think I'd prefer Pat Bryant of the bunch, but that it's really tough to rely on any of these guys.
It's tough, but guess what? That's the job. So
right.
At number 4, I have Pat Bryant. Who's your number 3?
My number 3 is Luther Burden, and this is the only wide receiver I'm going to talk about on the show. Left the game early with an injury, and the team is downplaying the severity of that. We think that he's going to be able to play, but stepped up in a game without Romadunze. Led the team with 7 targets, 6 receptions, 48 yards. Really, the per route run data, I know that gets a little bit messy because he hasn't been running a lot of routes, but I mean, truly elite, like 6th in the league in yards per route run behind just JSN, Puka, CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Tyreek Hill. We know he's a good player. He's got this after-the-catch wiggle and tenacity that we like to see. I think that we would need to see Romadunze stay out before we could trust him in lineups, but I think that if Odunze is going to stay out with this stress fracture in his foot, we can look at Luther Burden as kind of a back-end wide receiver 3 down the stretch here.
He's my number 2. It's double contingency. So Bryant is a contingency. My number 3 is a contingency. And number 2, Burden is a contingency because both he needs to be healthy. So far, they're indicating they think he is, but there's no guarantee there. And then whatever the hell is going on with Odunze, just talked about that game right before you came on. yeah, I kind of think that if you do that with Odunze in week 15, he doesn't play in week 16, but I don't know that for sure, obviously. So Luther Burden is my number 2. My number 3 is Matthew Golden, who's 32% rostered. And Jaden Reed would probably be my choice if there's no Christian Watson, but he's in the 40s. I think he's not eligible for the list, like 47 or something, maybe 41. I can't remember. But Golden fits under the limitations that we set ourselves here, and he was, important in the second half once Watson was hurt. It was interesting, and like, of course, it could wind up being Romeo Doubs. It's just a bunch of guys, but again, you're a injury-plagued fantasy team that made it to your semifinals. You've got a few studs, and then the rest of your lineup is Swiss cheese, and you're just trying guys. If there's no Christian Watson, I can see trying Matthew Golden.
Yeah, I've got him as an honorable mention, just because, again, it would take I'd need to see something before I could get him in my lineups. And I guess we saw a little bit of a flash last week, but they're also downplaying the Christian Watson injury, saying that he avoided serious injury. He should be back next week. These are some of those, like, it's so hard because we're working with an incomplete puzzle right now. Like, if you told me Luther Burden was 100% healthy and Roma Dunze was out for the rest of the season, Luther Burden would probably be my number 1. And if you told me Matthew Golden was going to be a full-time player because Christian Watson was going to be out for the next 2 weeks, he probably would have cracked my top 5. But what we saw is that when Christian Watson returned, it just completely nuked the value of Matthew Golden. He wasn't running any downfield routes. He just started catching the ball near the line of scrimmage. So his value is completely contingent on whether Christian Watson is active or not. And that's the only reason, just because they downplayed the severity of the injury, that I expect Watson to be back and couldn't get Golden into my top 5. But if Watson's out, I think Golden makes for a very interesting streamer.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said. You're using a lot of words to say what I said, which is these 3 guys, Bryant, Golden, Burden, are all just like, yeah, you got to find out what the main guy's doing, and if the main guy or the other guy, as it were. So we're not spending. The fab doesn't matter at this point, but like in terms of rifling through options, I don't mind rifling through these guys. Who's your number 2?
This one is simply a lotto ticket, but I was shocked to see Brian Robinson is still available in 33% of leagues. I mean, if McCaffrey has to miss time, which Chris, an idiom of the show, little bones, we know Christian McCaffrey has him, and he's been healthy so far this year, but tiny bones, I'm sorry. But if something happens, to Christian McCaffrey this week, we're looking at a league winner in Brian Robinson. It shocked me that he is still available in a third of leagues. Next week, we're probably not looking at any viable startability from Brian Robinson unless something happens to McCaffrey during the week. But if McCaffrey happens to go down next week, week 17 against Chicago, that is a great matchup for running backs. We'd be plugging Brian Robinson in without thinking twice. So this time of year, just, kind of zooming out, like big picture theory, I try to get as many of these injury-away running backs as possible, because even if I don't need them, I'd prefer them to be on my bench scoring points than in my opponent's lineup. I don't want to get in these bidding wars for these guys who are being thrusted into a big role. So see that he's still available in a third of leagues. If I'm playing in any leagues on Yahoo, I am making him one of my top pickups this weekend.
And just to be clear, you're not talking about a handcuff to McCaffrey. You're talking about almost like a block move, even if you don't have McCaffrey.
100%. If you have McCaffrey, he's the number 1 priority. But even if you don't have McCaffrey, just pick him up, because, worst case scenario, you're just wasting a bench spot with a bunch of other players that are being wasted on your bench. Best case scenario, you get to plug in a top 15 running back. And even if you've got a loaded team where you don't need him, you're keeping him out of your opponent's lineup. It's just crazy to me to see a guy with this much upside still available in 2/3 of Yahoo leagues.
And so for this waiver segment, I didn't really do the handcuff guys, even though you're right. I don't want to just categorize Robinson as a handcuff guy. He's like a handcuff and block guy. I've been doing them so many weeks in a row, and we did a whole show a week and a half ago dedicated to the list of running backs that we would handcuff, that I felt like that work was done on my side of things, but I love that you brought him up, because I think that's right. Wouldn't that also be true for Emmanuel Wilson if he was available? Wouldn't it also be true? Like, you can play a little.
And I didn't want to come here and talk about 5 different handcuffs,
exactly,
but I was shocked to see how many were readily available on Yahoo.
That's right. And so we'll let Brian Robinson be Dave's number 2, and he'll just stand in for all of those other potential handcuffs that, yes, if you have the main guy, please get. But even if you don't, you can be a little crafty and just see, because There's 2 more weeks left. Next week, it won't really be an option. So my 2 was Burden. So we're to our number 1s. Who's your number 1 waiver, Ed?
My number 1, and this is not even a handcuff. This is a guy that you could pick up and plug into your lineups in Week 16. Chris Rodriguez. He is Washington's RB1, and I was shocked to see that he is only rostered in 33% of leagues. The Commanders have had all season to show their cards, and they've shown that they clearly prefer Chris Rodriguez to be that lead back. He's a thumper. He doesn't take losses. He's good at mitigating when he gets hit behind the line of scrimmage. All those things that, are very Dan Quinn, old school football that we know he likes. I think this is a guy that immediately, if he's healthy, you're plugging him in as an RB3 or a flex. He was a game time decision last week, which leads me to believe that he's going to be ready this week. Week 16 against Philly, that's a tough matchup, but more than anything, I'm rostering this guy for Week 17. I think going up against Dallas in Week 17, that is a plug and play start. He's going to be cracking my top 24 this week or that week. So many of these guys that you're picking up are like hoping that things break in the right direction. With Chris Rodriguez, we already know who he is. We know that he's going to lead this Commanders backfield. I couldn't believe to see that he was able to pass for a waiver threshold, because we've been doing this show. We used Sleeper for our rostership. He has been pretty rostered in Sleeper. We haven't been able to talk about him on waiver shows, but 33% of leagues rostered on Yahoo was very surprising to me.
He's number 6 for me. You yelled at me that all these other receivers were so contingent, and then your number 1 is very contingent running back. The problem is I don't know if he plays, and JCM played pretty well against the Giants, and I don't like the matchup against the Eagles. But yes, if Rodriguez is active, he is very clearly the Commanders running back who should be ranked the highest. But I put him number 6. My number 1 is Michael Carter at 6% rostered. I have a league where I might need to add him. I'm going to spend a bunch of the remaining fab I have to get, unfortunately, both Colby Parkinson and Michael Carter, because, there's one last flex, and I have to worry about Christian Watson. And so I go, all right, well, Bam Knight needed to be carted off, so I don't think he's in the equation. And Amari DiMercado barely played coming off his high ankle sprain. Can the Cardinals mess around and not give Michael Carter the full workload? Of course. Is Michael Carter particularly special? No. I think he's played well for a month. So he's 6% rostered. And I'll put it this way, of the players that I think are going to definitely be in lineups, the only one that I'm really even mentioning that I am like, beggars can't be choosers, and you're going to have to use somebody. I feel like I actually can use Michael Carter.
Yeah, and I do worry a little bit how touches get split with Amari DiMercado, but, we can handle a 2-headed backfield. If we've got 2 guys out there, you can put them both in your lineup and hope for the best. It's when you have 3, when it was Benson, Carter, and DiMercado, that you kind of got scared away by the whole backfield. But I think with Bam Knight, with Knight now out of the picture, I think this is a little bit clearer. I think that Carter and DiMercado are both going to be kind of in that flex territory going into Week 16.
I mean, why would we say DiMercado's in the flex territory? He made my honorable mention list, but he played like 10 snaps last week. He had a high ankle sprain. It's possible that they work him back in more now. This was just a gradual work in, but this was entirely Michael Carter's game last week. And I grant you, it's not not an offense where I really want the running back. We just talked about earlier in the show about how all we want is the passing game, but.
There's been so much garbage time in this Cardinals offense, though, and Michael Carter does catch passes. So that alone, especially in PPR leagues, like he can walk out of any game with 5 or 7 receptions.
Yeah, indeed. So I'll take the chance. I'll quickly run through honorable mentions. David Sills, Devon Vele, got to make sure he's healthy. Mentioned DiMercado, Audric Estime, Jalen Coker, A.D. Mitchell. If I knew he was playing, A.D. Mitchell would have made my top 5. How about you?
Yeah, I think so. The fear. I mean, Brady Cook did throw a touchdown to him. We like to see that, but it wasn't a great game. I'd have much more confidence. I talked about this last week going into the game, that like if Tyrod Taylor was starting, I'd have A.D. Mitchell up here inside my top 30, and then if we get a Justin Fields start, it gets knocked down a little bit, and a Brady Cook start, it gets knocked down even further.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd feel much better if we were getting Tyrod Taylor out there.
How about a streaming defense for Week 16?
What did you mention, LaQuinn Allen by chance as an honorable mention? I think that's one.
I didn't. Bashal Tutin is out with a broken finger, so yeah. I mean,
and they're saying he's
it's a
probably
deep
not
shot, but
until the playoffs. So yeah, a deep shot. But we see Travis Etienne.
How about a defense?
Not going to get 100% of the touches. Yeah, the defense, I think my favorite one this week, sounds crazy, but Tennessee going up against Kansas City. Tennessee's defense has not been good this year, but all of the fear that we have about Kansas City and going up against them is Patrick Mahomes related. If we're getting a Gardner Minshew start here, I think this is one where we can expect some turnovers. We can't expect a lot of scoring from Kansas City. So Tennessee is still available in almost every fantasy league out there, and I will be streaming them in quite a few.
I would do the Saints. Home Jets. The Saints defense is good, and the Jets offense is not good. All right, well, Dave, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you joining for one final time in 2025. You're a great friend of this show and of mine. You can find Dave on social media all over the place. Just look up Dave Kluge. You can listen to him at Football Guys and read him there as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all the time this year, Chris.
And thank you so much for listening. Let me also thank the 3 sponsors that made today's show possible. We had Wild Grain for some absolutely delicious bread. We had Fitbod for working out some of that bread, but also just getting in a better fitness habit. And we had Lisa for when you want to sleep all that off. It's a very related group of sponsors today. Sponsors that have been with us for a while, which means a lot of the folks who listen have tried them out and have liked them well enough that they keep coming back to sponsor, which is wonderful and an indication of what an incredible audience you are. If you do see your way through to supporting a sponsor, maybe making a gift out of one of the sponsors, boy, it really helps. You can find information about today's sponsors in today's show notes. All the current sponsors are listed at harrisfootball.com. Okay, well, coming up tomorrow, we've got the Yacht Club show with myself and Andy Behrens. I'm sure we're going to talk about Week 16 ranks. We're also going to do our movie draft for January and February, so you can look forward to me totally dominating that with Andy Behrens, who he's going to have the first overall pick. Don't worry, he's going to screw it up. That's going to be pretty fun. You can, of course, find out how to join the Yacht Club and stay with us for the off-season. We will be making one extra show per week throughout the off-season. That information's at harrisfootball.com. There's no Thursday show, but I will be back Friday with our 2 great regular guests, Jake Trowbridge on DraftKings DFS, and Cousin Josh will be here with some busts for 2026. Until then, thanks again so much for listening. Your hat is awesome. You're awesome for wearing it. I will talk to you next time.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The closing theme is Say Yes by The Wellspring. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.